Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Minnesota Book Publishers Roundtable's inaugural event of the season. My name is Ashley Keel, and I'm the Vice President of MBPR. I am delighted to be moderating our discussion today, which focuses on programs designed to improve the diversity problem in publishing. Before I introduce our panelists, just a reminder that our annual member drive is currently in progress. If you or your company want to join Publishers Roundtable, membership is open until November 1st. Early bird pricing is available until October 1st. And just a note for all of you that this webinar is being recorded, and anything that you write in the chat box or the Q&A will be saved for posterity. And next, I will introduce our panelists, and then we'll chat about each of their programs. We will take questions from the audience at the end of our time together. If you have a question for any or all of our panelists, please type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, not the chat, the Q&A box, and we'll address as many of those as we can at the end. All right, so I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today. We have a really amazing group of people. I'm going to start with Helen Maimaris, who is the managing editor of Friction and the COO of its parent nonprofit, Brink Literacy Project. As part of her role, she has overseen the development of Brink's remote publishing internship program and heads up the hiring, growth, and training programs for the company's volunteer team. She also has varied editorial experience, from editing fiction and comics to art directing. Additionally, she is an instructor for Brink's Frames Prison Program, a graphic memoir literacy and storytelling course taught in both the United States and Scotland. Welcome, Helen. Next, Yasmin A. McClinton is a freelance editor at Tessera Editorial, providing copy editing, developmental edits, and sensitivity reading. She holds degrees in English and literacy and technology and is a former English teacher currently residing in South Carolina. Yasmin has been writing since elementary school and currently has 2 completed works, a revenge thriller and a women's fiction. She's represented by Melissa Edwards of Stone Song Press, LLC. Welcome, Yasmin. And Sarah Park Dahlen is an associate professor in the MLIS Program at St. Catherine University. Her research focuses on Asian American youth literature and transracial Korean adoption. She co-edits research on diversity in youth literature with Gabrielle Halko, co-edited Diversity in Youth Literature with Jamie Campbell Naidu, and co-edited the Children's Literature Association Quarterly's special issue on orphanhood and adoption in children's literature with Lise Wesseling. She serves as the community liaison for the Mirrors and Windows Fellowship, a program dedicated to mentoring Indigenous writers and writers of color working on picture books and middle grade and young adult literature at the Loft Literary Center. Welcome, Sarah. Sorry, just moving my windows. So welcome to all 3 of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. First off, we would love to hear a little bit about your organizations. Helen, would you like to start by telling us about the Brink Internship Program? What does it do and how did it begin?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ashley. So, our internship program began in 2012, I believe. What we've done is it okay if I just give a little bit of background on what we're about, and that will help to give an explanation? So, Brink Literacy Project's a literacy and storytelling nonprofit, and we essentially have 3 divisions that all kind of interfeed into each other: our education, our community, and our publishing. So, through our education, we do literacy and storytelling programs in prisons, schools, editing mentorship. Through our community division, we've set up a network of partnerships with literary organizations, institutions, universities, foundations to help us have greater impact in our education and publishing. And then through our publishing, we publish our imprint, which is Friction. It's a triannual literary anthology or journal, and the internship grows out of that kind of publishing side of things whilst giving interns experience actually in all 3 of those aspects. So we originally began it with 3 cycles a year of 12 weeks, and we'll kind of get on a little bit later, I imagine, to how we've adapted it and changed it. But the key aim was to increase accessibility to publishing, to give people that kind of foot in the door that often isn't possible, and to make that as adaptable around the other demands that interns might have. that's kind of a little summary.
Okay, and then can you tell us a bit about your role with the internship?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of, we've got this sort of dual structure going on where I'm COO of Brink, and then I'm also the managing editor of Friction. So on the COO side, that means I'm the direct line manager of our internship supervisor. So she actually does all the curriculum creation, the weekly assignments. She's the direct manager of our interns. But what we do together is candidate selection. We review the curriculum each time. And then crucially, I'm also the person who decides who we hire on from the internship into our volunteer team. And it's perhaps worth noting that our volunteer team is a kind of mentorship program with a lot of training involved to keep sort of giving back to our volunteers as well. That's kind of fed out of the internship.
Sure. I guess while we're in this area, I'm interested to kind of know what your curriculum looks like.
Absolutely. So we have, yeah, it was a great question to know. Our internship has always been remote. So again, I think we'll get on to the ways in which internships are changing with the current world situation. But we developed that specifically for two reasons. One, so that your geography didn't limit where you were able to intern. And secondly, to allow for different lifestyles that might normally be limited. So for example, if you have children, if you're doing other work, you know, so it can fit around that. And it's part-time, it's 10 hours only per week. So it allows you to balance in with other things around that. So the way that we do our curriculum is we set a weekly assignment per week in editing for the first 6 weeks. After that, our interns actually become a junior editor on our staff for the latter 6 weeks. I should say something we've developed recently is that we're expanding that program to 15 weeks. So these numbers are slightly off for our new program, but so they become and get actual real world experience as junior editors with us in the editing strand. And then alongside that, they will get tasks in marketing, editorial writing, such as book reviews or craft articles or essays that are then published through our website. Outreach, where they begin to understand how to request advanced review copies, network with publicists, network with agents. And recently, the thing we've done is add a production module where they begin to learn just the basics of InDesign, because we got feedback that that would be of real value to our interns and would help, you know, in just the way that production actually is in the real world. So we sort of sow those seeds earlier by developing this module, and then we provide further training for volunteers that are interested for when they become volunteers.
Okay, great. I'm so excited to ask you so many more questions that I have, but we're gonna move on to Yas. Would you like to tell us about Tessera Editorial and how it began?
Sure. So Tessera Editorial began, it was really the brainchild of Krista Tessera, and I think she was talking it over with her husband, and they were trying to figure out ways to bring more BIPOC people into the editing field, and give them opportunities, help them to get opportunities into this industry, which had been closed off to them. And then also, most especially since you have to be always centrally located in like New York and things like that, to be able to give them experiences remotely, to show, you know, what they have and what they can do remotely, just as people who are centered in New York. And so they began a mentorship program and I'm going to put a call out on Twitter to everyone to see who was interested, a BIPOC person who was interested. You don't have to have any experience. You just have to have an interest in becoming an editor, working as an editor, freelance editor, I suppose, or anything in the publishing industry. And she got like a whole lot of responses of people who wanted to be in. And then she let maybe about 20, 25 people in, and then everyone else, you know, was waitlisted. And so that began their 3-month internship. So that was 1.0. Once they were done with 1.0, she saw that there were some, I guess they just really didn't want it to end. And so some of the editors that she had mentored during that time were like, hey, what if we got together to have like, you know, to have a staff and be working, you know, kind of like a consortium, working as editors and still kind of like under you, mentoring and things like that, and you just continue to be our mentor. And she was like, okay. And so then they established the second half of Tessera. So we've got the mentorship program, and then we have like the editorial side where we are staffed by people from our mentorship program who want to continue on a freelance basis with the staff side. And that side works with publishing houses, works with self-published authors. It's been growing and growing, and have been able to find work that way where they had difficulty doing so beforehand. So I think that's pretty much the basics of it.
Okay. And then how did you get involved, and what is your role?
Sure. So I got involved because I was one of the people who saw the call out and signed up for it. And so I didn't make it into 1.0, but I made it into 2.0. So I was in the second cohort and just loved it so much. Like I said, it's a 3-month responsibility requirement that we're in there. And in those 3 months, Krista is giving various assignments, different types, developmental, copy editing, sensitivity reader, doing a reader report, different levels that we would find in as we're working. And then she, you know, gives us feedback. So that was really great. She is a really fantastic teacher. And so the experience was just so great at the end of it. We also have webinars weekly or bi-weekly, I should, and a couple times a month. Yeah, we have webinars from professionals in the field. So she also put a call out to professionals to come and talk to the mentees and tell them about everything publishing. So we've had agents, we've had editors at big houses, we've had other freelance editors to talk about how they manage and things like that. So by the time my cohort was done, I just felt like, you know, I just couldn't have enough. And I was like, you know, Krista, what else can I do? Like, I would love to, you know, be a part of the staff, and I would like to just kind of still work with you. You just can't get rid of me, is what I told her. And so I just started working with her then, just as a freelance editor in the consortium. And then as the time went past, and she asked if I wanted to take on some back of the house kind of roles with management and working with like the editors, and kind of, because it was just getting so big with the jobs coming in and with the editors that she was taking on from the mentorship. So she needed a little bit more help. And I was like, sure, because I wanted to learn everything that I could about the publishing industry. And so I've been doing that. So I work as her partner. She likes to talk more, so I kind of stay back in the background and just kind of work with when we get some inquiries in. Then she typically she doesn't decide, but we kind of figure out, because she's had more experience with what everyone can do. And so who best fits this inquiry? We also put it out to the whole group. So it really depends on what the inquiry is. And then I work, you know, one-on-one with maybe the editors on whether or not they want to take on that inquiry with the clients coming in. So I do a little bit of everything, but mostly working with like some of our bigger clients that are coming in with like a whole lot of projects and kind of managing that.
Okay. And then just one clarifying question. Some of the people who have gone through the mentorship program and are taking on kind of freelance projects from publishing houses, there is some mentorship there as well. Am I understanding that right?
Yes. So everyone who is on staff has gone through the cohort at some point. and then Krista will ask them if they want to take on, if they want to work as part of the staff, and they'll say yes or no or whatever. And then once they're on, that's what I should have said, is even though we're on staff and we've gone through the mentorship, we still are mentored through her. We still go to her with all sorts of questions. So it is a continual thing. We still get to go to the webinars, and we get our own staff meetings and also our own professionals to come in and speak with us maybe on a higher level than they would with the mentorship. So it's an ongoing thing, a learning process the whole time through.
That's fantastic. I love it. Okay, thank you. And next up, Sarah, can you tell us a bit about the Mirrors and Windows program and how it got started?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I just want to say it's such an honor to be here and to hear about my fellow panelists' work. It's really exciting what you're doing. Yasmin, I administered the first diversity baseline survey that Lee and Lowe did in 2015-2016, where we found that publishing is 82%, or the editorial staff is 82% white. And then last year we found that it was 85% white. So yeah, the work you're doing is incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I'm primarily in children's and young adult literature, and I don't know if people have seen this before, but this is an infographic showing how not diverse children's literature was in 2018. This data is collected and analyzed by the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Education. And you'll see that 50% of the children are white, 27% are animals or other trucks, corkscrews, etc. And that means that the remaining 23% are Indigenous children and children of color. But you'll also see that the mirrors that the children have, some of them are fractured, they're shattered, and you could see the shards of glass on the bottom, because not all of them are good representations, right? Some of them are distortions. And this was, the mirrors metaphor was inspired by Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, and Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop's article, Mirrors, Windows, and Sliding Glass Doors, also inspired the name of our fellowship program. When I moved to Minnesota 11 years ago, I could count the number of children's book creators of color, Indigenous creators on one hand. And we have a really, really rich community here of children's book creators, and they're mostly white. And so that's been a problem. And so Bao Phi, who's the program director at the Loft Literary Center, approached me and asked me if he could get some funding. Would I be interested in working with them on creating a fellowship program based on Mirrors and Windows? And I said yes. So basically what our program is, it's a 6-month fellowship program. We do it once a year, and it's been around now for 2 years, where we support emerging writers who want to write the range of board books through young adult in whatever genre, whatever format. And so, so what we do is the applications are typically due in the summer. We decide in the early fall, and then the fellowship program starts in January. We have workshops once a month for 6 months. 5 of them are local teaching artists. So I taught or co-taught the first one, and then we had 4 others. And then we also had one that was taught by a teaching artist that we flew in from New York, someone who worked at a publishing company. We had Phoebe last year, who was Walter Dean Myers and Lawrence Yep's editor. And then this year we had Namrata Tripathi, who is the publisher of Kokila, a new diversity imprint at Penguin. And so our fellows, we have 12 a year, and it's really hard to choose. It's excellent that it's that we get so much interest in the program. But yeah, so we have 12 a year. They also get a manuscript consultation by Molly Beth Griffin, who's a local writer and poet and has just been a huge support for diverse books. And so that's sort of one of the, the fellows can work with Molly at any point during the process. They can work with her early if they already have something coming in, or if they're working on it throughout the fellowship, they can work with her more toward the end. But yeah, that's basically what Mirrors and Windows is.
Great, thank you. And then you are the coordinator
Yeah,
of this event? What's more about your role?
so my role is the community lead or the community liaison. So I worked with BOW to sort of shape what the program was going to look like. So we had decided that the structure was going to be, for the fellows, we wanted a range of, sort of as much as possible and even distribution among picture books, middle grade, young adults, graphic novels, I also helped choose the other 2 judges who were going to be selecting the fellows. And I worked with BOW to come up with the list of teaching artists who were going to be teaching the different classes. I also try to, I have planned like social events. So after our workshops, I've invited everyone out to, like a pay your own dinner so that we could also spend time together afterwards and just really build community in that way. And then create like a Slack space so that we could share resources and communicate in between and after workshops. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, great. And then something I was thinking about as the 3 of you were talking was funding. Sarah, you touched on that really briefly. How is the program funded?
So the program is supported by grants from the Jerome Foundation and the Archie D. and Bertha H. Walker Foundation, as well as support provided by Loft members. And so we're very, very thankful to the grant organizations, as well as people who are members that donate to the Loft.
Okay. And Yasmin, would you be able to tell us about how funding works for Tessera?
Yeah, so funding works for Tessera. They've got a Ko-fi account where they can have donations to come in, but then also from our staff side, when we have jobs that come in through Tessera, then there is a percentage that is given to Tessera that funnels back into the mentorship program to pay for like the Chicago Manual of Style account and the other resources that the mentees use throughout the mentorship program.
Okay, great. And Helen, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about funding for your programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're an entirely independent nonprofit. So funding is really, really hard is the answer. We do an absolute hodgepodge of different things each and every year, and we kind of get better and better each year, which is always great. But then something like coronavirus crops up and you have to, change your tactic or change what you're doing. So we do a real mix. We get a small amount of grants. We get some foundational support. We have small fees for our contests that we run twice a year now that are fed back into our journal and our internship program. We have sales from the journal. We go to AWP once a year for additional kind of event sales. We have some donations to the overall nonprofit that's run through our website. Trying to think of all of the various things we do. So it's kind of like drawing together all of those strands to really kind of facilitate the programs that we're doing. And we do also always have something where if we're creating a new program, we have to have got the financial sort of stability up front. Just because that can often be, real complexity for nonprofits because funding's so scattered and unsure. So we always do that where we have kind of that policy. So that's the kind of rough rundown.
Sure. Yeah, funding. I think that's a big thing for everyone.
Absolutely.
Next up, I would like to talk a little bit about location and logistics. And I think a few of you have touched on that already. Obviously, as Yasmin was pointing out, one big complaint about publishing in terms of inclusivity is that, a lot of people say you have to be in New York or Boston or another big city to really be part of it. And it sounded like, Yasmin, let's start with you. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are working remotely now, and it sounds like that was the case from the beginning with Tessera Editorial. And I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to speak to about location and the logistics of that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, so that was definitely a big, huge thing. So it was funny when, well, it's not funny, but like when, when Corona hit and everything, and so everyone had to work from home, then it made it more tangible, I think, to those in the industry to see that it is very manageable it might be a little bit harder, but it is manageable to still, do all the things you need to do with publishing at a remote level, and it still is quality work. And so therefore there is such a broad number of people who have the experience, who have the talent to work in this industry, and to allow all those people to come in. And so with our mentorship and our staff, we have staff, all over. They are not just in, central to, US or anything like that. We have mentees that branch out even further. And so they are on so many, I think one of our mentorships, we had people in, it might have been 13 different time zones. And so while we all can't maybe meet at a central time, for webinars, we record it just like this so that they can watch it. But because we're on Slack a lot, so it's like, it's always talking. It doesn't even feel as if they are on different time zones, because someone is always around and talking and watching the videos, and same with the staff. And so it just meant a lot, so that people were able to see that it can be done. And there's still, hurdles that, we need to jump over to get more BIPOC in the publishing field. Just as Sarah was saying, it's still an uphill battle, but I think we are getting there, like step by step.
Hope so. Okay, and Sarah, would you like to speak to location?
Yeah, so because this mentorship program is facilitated through the Loft, this is open to Minnesota people only. But we did consider geographic diversity. And the thing is, before COVID, everyone did have to come down to the Twin Cities in order to participate in the meetings, the workshops, which were held at the Loft, and people came. So that was great, although the majority of the people are based here in the Twin Cities. And then when we pivoted to virtual because of COVID, we held the meetings online, and almost everybody participated in those as well. So that was good. And it's because, what I said earlier about how Minnesota has such a rich children's publishing community, but it's mostly white. And so we really wanted to focus on growing a community of BIPOC children's book creators here in Minnesota. So,
right.
Yeah.
And then have you found that it was challenging in any way to switch to online? I mean, obviously the logistics of living in a pandemic are their own thing, but in terms of your program specifically.
Yeah, I think I think it was what I would say is I don't want to call it, well, yeah, maybe a little bit of a difficulty, where some people's level of comfort with different technology. Some of us were using Google Meet for the first time, and so just getting used to that and figuring out, when I share my screen, like, what does that look like? The lack of social engagement, because we could no longer go out to dinner afterwards and things like that, I think was felt pretty hard by everybody. And there was another thing about moving online that was hard, but it's escaping me for the moment.
If it comes back, we can come back to it.
Yeah.
And then Helen, you said that your program is generally remote anyway. Are they, where are most of your participants located? Are they all in different places as well?
Absolutely all different places. In case my accent wasn't a giveaway, I'm based in the UK. We've had interns from all over, but for example, at the moment we have staff, volunteers that were formerly interns in New Zealand, in Canada, across all time zones in the US. So I think in a way, because we always had that foundation rather than having to switch because of the recent situation, it's just what it's always been. For us, that's the way that the organization grew.
Right. Let's see, check on time. Okay, and I guess the next thing I want to talk about is kind of what are some of the biggest challenges that you and your team and your program has encountered as you've gone along. Things that might have been expected and things that might have been unexpected. Sarah, would you like to begin?
Yeah, and I remembered what it was. Our workshops are 3.5 hours long. So sitting in front of a computer for that long, even with a break in between, and then not being able to physically look at books in person and to discuss them together in that way was really hard. I think the fact that we could only choose 12 fellows out of the many applications that we got was really hard. I just remember when we got down to the finalists, and we could still choose only 12, but we had more than that. It was really hard. But you know, that's a great thing that we got so many applicants. So in that sense, you know, we encourage everyone to apply again. Let's see. We also had to narrow down our teaching artists, and a lot of people had come to us saying how excited they were about the program, and if they could help in any way, then they would, you know, love to be a part of it. And so, so again, it was like challenging, but also hard. And then just funding. So as Helen said, you know, COVID has disrupted everything. And the Jerome Foundation talked with the Loft and decided that we're going to put the program on pause for 2021. And then we're going to restart again in 2022. So I just remember the day that Bao called me and said, we can't do Mirrors and Windows next year, but we can do it the year after. And I hung up the phone and I just cried, knowing that there was going to be this gap year that we didn't have. Yeah, so I think those were probably some of the biggest challenges that we've had.
Okay. And then Helen, how about you? What are some of the big challenges and changes that your program has seen?
Well, first, I just want to say I'm really sorry to hear that, Sarah. Hearing stories like that from all over about the ways in which the industry is being shaped at the moment. I would say two main things along the vein of what we're talking about. Our first is talking of diversity and inclusion. I would say it's reaching communities that we want to reach, because the whole of our industry is geared towards being inaccessible for certain people, and that goes from people of color, it goes to the LGBTQ+ community. We also track, for example, disability in our candidates, our internships, and our staff. We think about people who are from religious minorities, veterans, and this, I will say, all of this is optional self-identification. So we're going on what people are comfortable with reporting, but it does help to give us an idea. And we've got better and better based on that sort of self-ID and on the candidates by using that community network that we've developed. So where we partner with universities or directly with professors, kind of reaching sort of cohorts you wouldn't otherwise. We also try and partner outside of universities, because otherwise, you know, you have to have a certain level of education to be able to come to us, and that's not actually a requirement for our internship. So I would say that is, you know, that's just going to be a challenge always that we have to get better and better at, and that's something that we're trying specifically to be cognizant of. So that's sort of reaching communities. And then, just to be completely realistic about everything, it's funding. It's not just funding for our program. In fact, it's the funding to make sure that we can carry on our journal specifically, because that's the linchpin of our learning, because it spans all the different sectors from editing to marketing to outreach and so on, that our interns learn through. So although we get, you know, sales that are poured right back into it, you know, we make a very expensive product. It's completely full color. It's got commissioned artwork for every single piece. We're often excluded from a lot of funding because we publish both literary fiction and genre, and grants don't like that. We often publish at least 30% completely new authors to try and give them that career launch. So again, taking chances on people who haven't had a chance before. And we provide free editing mentorship for every single piece that goes in, whether it's a celebrity or completely new author. So we basically decided to do a completely stupid thing. And that's partly why it's so difficult, but hopefully ends up being a fantastic learning curve for the actual internship program.
I don't know. I think sometimes the hardest things are the best things to do, even though they're hard and they seem stupid.
That's what we think. But...
And I guess I want to follow up on that by asking, you know, you were talking about outreach being a little bit difficult and finding people for the program. Do you have specific qualifications that people need to meet to be eligible, or how do you choose the people who are interested?
So we have a submittable form. It has all of the basic information, which just asks contact details and their level of education as a background. But we have taken on people who have just graduated from high school before. Does generally tend to be people who are currently students in the university or after, but that's, I think, another thing about who we're reaching as well. And then we have a number of essay questions, and they gauge anything from experience level, passion, how much they know about Friction and Brink, a variety of things, just so we can get a sense of that. And from that application form, we whittle it down to a short list for interview, which, as Sarah said, is heartbreaking most of the time. I'll just be on a call with my internship supervisor, will be like, but this, about, you know, different candidates. And from that short list of people we interview, we will select 5 interns per cycle.
Yes, it is really difficult. And then I think, Yasmin, we didn't talk about challenges with you. And I think the other question that Sarah also addressed was, you know, choosing candidates. So you can start with either choosing candidates or challenges to the program, whichever you prefer.
Okay, well, first I have to just say that I am like fangirling over Helen and Sarah with the things that they're doing. And I'm just like, this is just so fantastic. I want to know all of this. Yeah, so let's see. The challenges that we end up facing is what happens after, you know, the mentorship is done. If they are not like on staff with us, then how do they continue on with, you know, what they want to do in the publishing industry? We are still, our mentees still come across huge hurdles, like barriers that prevent them from, you know, going and doing internships and things like that. There are still internships with big houses that are still very specific to, you know, a certain kind, and have requirements that our people can't meet. And so like the continuing factor after that, what is the next level after us? And then even when we're on staff, for a long while, and even still now, a lot of the work that we get tends to be like sensitivity reading. Well, we're so much more than sensitivity reading, right? We went into this mentorship so that we have the experience to be copy editors and do all of that stuff. So getting the projects in that meet all of those different levels of expertise that we have, because the people that we have on staff, I mean, they are an amazing group of people, and they've got so much talent, and they just want to do like all this good work. And while we love sensitivity reading, we can't be the, you know, the everything for everyone in terms of that. And so we would like to be seen beyond that. And then I forgot what your other question was that I was supposed to answer.
How you recruit people. I think you had said that initially Krista sent out a call and people responded, and then she chose a certain number of people. Are there specific qualifications that people need to meet? How are people chosen? If you don't get into one, you're in the next one?
That's exactly it. So we really don't turn anyone away. It's just first come, first serve. So the first, and then we try to max it so that they have a real authentic experience, and it's not like too big. So we try to max it at like the 25, and then whoever comes in, the 26th person and on, just gets, you know, trickle to the next round. And around about the end of every cohort, she'll just put another call out, and we'll also do it on the Tessera account that, you know, we're open for people. So we always have people who are signing up, and then we just say, you know, hey, we'll see you in the next round. And that's how we try to meet like the needs of everyone. But really after, and then it's up to them, depending on like how invested they are, whether or not they will, you know, want to continue on, or especially with us on staff, or they have other plans.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess that kind of leads into my next question, which is, what are some of the former trainees and former mentees doing now? And Yasmin, we can go back to you. You're saying that, you know, some of them are working with Tessera Editorial on freelance work, but are there other things that you would like to tell us about what people are doing now?
I know that we've had a couple who have become agents. So, you know, they wanted to kind of learn the editorial from the editorial standpoint, but then to become agents. So they've done that, and they've been like really successful about it. And so it's cool to hear their take on things and how they're using what they learned in the mentorship. Then we also have some who we have, I think, one or two who have actually found employment at a house, like one of the publishing houses, and is working directly with them. So that was a good one. We've got some others who are writers, and so they've become agented and are, you know, subbing their materials and things like that. And then, I mean, we've got people, everyone wants to do so many different things, but like those are the ones that I've heard so far. From people who are on staff. Those who were not on staff, I don't know exactly what they've like done yet. They've not come back to say, so maybe they're still on the search.
Sure. Okay, great. And then Sarah, would you be willing to tell us what some of your post-mentees are doing, or post-fellows, I mean?
Yeah, I mean, this panel gave me an opportunity to reconnect with everyone, to follow up and see how they're doing. And it was really exciting to get their emails back. So one of the conditions of applying for the fellowship program is that you couldn't have already published 2 books, or you could have published only 2, like at the maximum. And so some of our fellows who had already had books in the pipeline, they came out this year. And so this was really exciting just to see these books came out this summer. They're published by Capstone, which is a local publisher, and they're early readers, and they're just lovely books, filling a need in the community that we definitely need more books in. So those writers now have even more books in the pipeline, and that's really, really exciting. Several of our writers, I think one at least has gotten an agent, and a couple of them have submitted manuscripts to various places or applying for different fellowship mentorship programs. Several of them have been invited to speak at schools or at national conferences, or local conferences, and that's been really exciting to give them that kind of visibility. Vong Badanya, who's the author of Astrid and Apollo, she actually came back as a teaching artist for us. So she was in the first cohort, and then she came and taught the middle grade workshop for our second cohort. So that was really exciting to have her return to us in that regard. So yeah, it's exciting. Almost all of them who responded to me are still working on the manuscripts that they had brought into the fellowship program with. And so, you know, one of them who needs to go to different sites to do like archival work or something isn't going to be able to do that. And so she's doing everything else that she can without actually going to visit an archive to do the research that she needs. Yes. But yeah, it's been really exciting to hear them progress in their work.
That's great. And how about you, Helen? Would you be able to tell us what some of your, I mean, I know you have said that some people are currently working with the program still, and what are some of your other graduates doing?
So I should say a lot of people that work with the program still, they just do it, you know, absolutely part-time as volunteers, so anything from 2 to 10 hours a week, and they work around their other kind of work. It sounded very similar to Yasmin. So we've got people that are really doing writing. We have people that become creative writing professors. We have people who do creative writing or education work with youth. We've had people become librarians, and a trend that we saw before, but that's actually been amped up since Corona, is we've had more and more of our staff gain internships at publishing houses since, because those have become remote and our staff are so spread out. So because it used to have to be in person, you, as Yasmin said earlier in this panel, you were limited to people in those cities. So while that's face-to-face, you have constricted your pool immediately, and now suddenly the entire of the country, if not the world, but certainly the country, have opened up, and they've suddenly realized that you can get a lot of really fantastically talented people from all over. So we've actually seen an increase in the number of our staffers who have gone on to other internships, purely just in the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, and then I think this is probably the last question before we go to audience Q&A, which is, I guess it's kind of a two-part question. Kind of what other things do you think are needed in this kind of space? Like obviously your programs are doing very specific things. So what are some of the other things that people could do if they wanted to do something? And related to that, if somebody who already works in publishing wanted to help your organization or support your mission, what could they do? Sarah, would you like to start?
Yes, I would be happy to let you all know how you can help. Funding, stable funding. You know, whenever something is funded from a grant, just the terms of the grant or because of COVID or whatever, the instability of that, it's always sort of like hanging. And so if we had more funding to support the program, that would be great. Specifically, I would love more funding for the manuscript consultations that Molly Beth Griffin does, because she does a wonderful job working with the fellows, and depending on where they are in the process, they might want more hours with her. And so we would really love to be able to pay Molly to do more of that. So if anyone wants to throw us some dollars for that, please let me know. And then the second part of your question is if someone in publishing wanted to help your organization, right? Yeah, I mean, we've had some publishers come to us and say, hey, we would be willing to accept unagented, unsolicited manuscripts from your fellows if they like put it in the subject line or put it in the body of an email or something. And that has been really generous of them to do. So if more publishers wanted to do that, if agents wanted to do that, that would be great. Yeah, I think those are some things that people could do to support our fellows.
And then some detailed to follow up on that. In terms of publishing companies contacting you, would they follow up with you directly?
They would work directly with the fellows.
Fellows.
Yeah, but if they wanted to create that relationship, then they would talk to Belle and me, and then we could set that up.
Okay,
yeah.
great. And then in terms of donations, would that be to the Loft Literary Center specifically?
Yeah, and then they would probably earmark it if they wanted to support this program specifically. I forgot what because my donations are automatic, and so I forgot exactly what the donation looks like, but hopefully there's a way to earmark it and say, hey, I want to support Mirrors and Windows.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Great, okay. And then Yasmin, how about you? Both what other things do you think are needed in this kind of training space? And if someone working in publishing wanted to help, how could they help?
Right. So if someone wanted to help, what we would love is your time. And so your time meaning you could come and talk with our mentees and our staff about what you do and how we could, get a foot in the door or just anything, just talking shop. And then what we really would love are opportunities, like internship opportunities at the various houses. Doesn't have to be a big house, it could be anywhere, where our mentees and our staff are able to just kind of work in the day in the life of, very much like what Helen said that some of the publishing houses are doing in terms of offering internship. And so that's the biggest thing that our mentees and our staff have expressed that they would like is after that. And that's what I meant, like after this, then what? We've gotten their, that we've gotten it wet, like, with what they know and everything. How do they further, if they want to get in the world and become, an editor? So that is definitely what we need. Just your time and the opportunity to work at the house with you and kind of learn what you do from right up in there.
Okay. And then I guess another thing you had talked about, publishers reaching out for freelance work. Presumably that would be helpful. Does it ever happen that a publisher might work with one of your mentee editors and then would they continue to go through Tessera, or could they contact someone directly outside of Tessera, that kind of thing, if they had a good relationship?
Oh yeah, definitely. So typically they, they'll just reach out to us because I guess they don't know who they want yet. And then if they happen to make a good connection with the editors, and a few of our editors have independent relationships with the publishers. They really, got off on, on a great foot with each other. And so they work directly, and that is a big, huge, celebration. We love that story when we hear that. So they can definitely reach out to those people. When anyone inquiries, we have all of our editors on our webpage, and so you can kind of look through and see who you think is, a best fit for you, and let us know, that you want, a certain person, and we will contact that person, and that person then goes. So all we do is kind of just make the connection, and then the editor goes and reaches out to the client, and then they have their, their relationship that way and are forming it that way. And we do have publishers that are working like with us, and we're their vendor for them. So we do all the payouts and things because they want like that one-stop shop. But they will let us know, hey, is such and such available, or who might you have for this? And so we really make sure we don't pick and choose who does, you know, anything. We definitely give it to the group. And then it's, you know, first come, first serve. Is this the best fit for you? And people will say, I'd like to try it. And they can then go, and it could be 2 people, who knows, but they can then go and, you know, reach out to the client. And we always allow, you know, let the client choose who the editor is going to be, whoever they felt is the best fit.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And Helen, those 2 questions are kind of, what else do you think is needed in this kind of training space generally? And also, if someone who was already working in publishing wanted to help your organization or your mission, what could they do?
In terms of training space, in a way, I think we're seeing it happen. I've always been an advocate for more remote work. That's both the geography and the allowing for other kinds of lifestyles, allowing people to have children, to live where they live, to be on different time zones, to have to adapt it around someone they're caring for, whatever it might be. And in terms of internships or programs like that, for them to be part-time so that they can be balanced around other things. And for somebody already working in publishing, there's a number of ways that are really helpful, which kind of echo what both of my fellow 2 panelists have said. For example, if you work with authors, if you're an agent, anything like that, we have a number of relationships with direct agencies where they send me work for consideration to go into a journal. So we are always looking for more connections to authors, to agencies, to get that sort of fantastic, great quality work that we like to consider. We are always happy if you'd like to donate to the organisation, and that's through the website. It's just brinklit.org, and there's a big bright orange donate button in the top corner. And then one of the other things is taking a look at our journal and subscribing or sharing it with a friend. You know, I could do a great sell of one right here. We always want more readers. We're never going to complain about having more readers, and you know, you get that product, and in return you are helping to support all of our educational programs and the journal itself, and so that's kind of the main things.
Yes, great. Okay, I'm going to move on to Q&A. I have 2 questions here that are a little bit related. Oh, and more are coming. That's wonderful. So people are wondering how publishers can reach out and connect, like companies that have open positions who want to recruit more BIPOC applicants. How would they reach out? Because it seems like so many people who are applying to work with our publishing companies are white. Is there, I mean, obviously we could reach out directly to your specific programs, but are there other suggestions you have for that kind of thing?
I'll jump in with that. Something that we found to be fairly successful. It really depends how you're doing your candidate selection, but we found if you connect directly with either organizations or institutions that are diverse, for example, universities that are not just geared towards people, all white people. If you direct with LGBTQ plus organizations, sometimes, you know, we can't have access everywhere, and that's one of the key things. Is we want to get into those communities, and we want to shine a spotlight on those writers in terms of the content we publish, or to kind of make it a very open call that we're looking for those staff members to us, but you have to have that way in and that connection. So we've done very specific networking in terms of our community network.
Would you be willing to speak to a little more detail on that kind of networking?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had connections with PEN America's Prison Writing Program, Lambda Literary, the Afghan Women's Writing Project. They're kind of all quite specific for writers, for example. We then have a list of, I actually can't remember the number now, but I want to say 14 to 15 universities that we have direct partnerships with, plus several hundred professors on top of that who might just be one point of contact within a university. And for example, for our internship, we send out actual information to help them advertise it to their to their students. So that will be graphics, that'll be information, and we make sure that we have that connection there for them. And you know, it does take time, and it takes, you know, that outreach and you know, discussion back and forth, and we're constantly growing it and also constantly reviewing it to make sure that we are, you know, trying to be better and better. But that's our kind of pathway that we aim for.
Yep. Okay. Sarah or Yasmin, do either of you have thoughts on that? Like how publishers could recruit for open positions into a more diverse audience?
Go ahead, Sarah.
I think I echo a lot of what Helen said about, you know, going into places where BIPOC are already doing some of the work. You know, and I think if you're only looking at like the publishing graduate programs, which I know are trying to diversify, but, you know, a lot of they remain majority white, then you're not going to get the full diversity that you're looking for. And so going to places like the Quality Conference or other places where BIPOC writers, illustrators, and people who are trying to break into publishing in various ways. I imagine Yasmin is a great group of people because that's what they're specifically doing, right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, we are. And besides us, I mean, I know when I'm on Twitter, I follow a lot of organizations that are for BIPOC, like POC and publishing. So it's just like really doing the search and, you know, looking in those social media areas of those groups of people that you might want to kind of, you know, throw your hat in and say, hey, we've got something. Is there anyone in here who would like to consider it? That I think would be a great place if you're not finding them in those graduate you know, conferences and things like that, where they might not be because they might not have, you know, the ability to travel there, the funds or whatever to be in there. So that's why you're always going to see those specific people, the same people in those places. And so you have to go where the masses are, and that's like social media and finding those like Black creatives is another one. And you know, there's the Latinx community. So there's so many different groups within Twitter alone. And they've got websites and everything that you could go into and really see the people that are in there and create that relationship with them so that you are getting a real good mix of candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add something to that? So the 2015 Diversity Baseline Survey didn't survey interns, but the 2019 survey did. And what they found was that the most diverse group of people within publishing are the people who are the least empowered, whose jobs are the least stable. Mm-hmm. And so that needs to change, right? And so internships and mentorships are really, really wonderful. And that is definitely part of the solution. But what we really need is for more of those people to move into permanent positions with a living wage in a city like New York or Boston, where they can actually like stay and thrive in those spaces. And it's also not just about recruiting BIPOC applicants into these jobs, but what kind of environment are they walking into, and how are they going to continue to be supported? And if they continue to be the minority in an organization, what kind of additional burdens, additional responsibilities are they taking on, and how are they being compensated and recognized for that work?
That's absolutely true. I mean, we could talk a whole nother hour about that one right there, right? But yeah, she's absolutely correct in that, definitely.
Okay, and then one other question, we don't have a whole lot of time yet. The question is, do any of you have any thoughts, comments, or resources around improving diversity in scholarly editing and publishing, which is also very white? I don't know if the scholarly publishing is different in the sense we've kind of been talking about publishing generally. And I know Sarah's program is more writing focused and Yasmin's program is more editing focused, and Helen's is kind of a combination of the two. So I guess I don't know if any of you have any other thoughts on scholarly. Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so after we did the diversity baseline survey, Charlotte Park actually contacted me, and because she wanted to do a similar survey for scholarly publishing, and she found that it's very, very white. And it's, you know, similar issues to publishing for children or publishing for adults. There's just so many white people, and there needs to be more BIPOC, but in what ways are BIPOC being supported into publishing? In what ways are they being left out of publishing? So for example, in the review process for people who are trying to get their things published, when reviewers don't understand what is going on in this essay because the experience is so different from them, right? Then that locks them out of publishing. Then that means that a writer does not have an opportunity to engage in the review process, to edit their work, and to have sort of a glimpse into that, right? So then they will not be as prepared to become an editor of a journal because they have not yet gone through that rigorous process as many times possibly as, you know, a more published writer. So in my bio, you referenced the Research on Diversity in Youth Literature Journal. So that's a journal that we co-founded, and we started in 2016, 2017, precisely because the children's literature academic journals in our field had shut out some of the essays that, and it's a long story. If you want to learn more about it, you can read my essay, A Step from Heaven, about it, published in The Lion and the Unicorn. But, you know, we had to start this journal because we felt like our existing journals were not having the conversations that we wanted to have. And it was the editors who were gatekeeping in that regard. And so it's similar, my concern around all of this is similar to what I said earlier. When we invite or when we mentor BIPOC into these new roles with more responsibility, how are we being treated? How are we being supported? How are we being compensated and acknowledged for this work that benefits everybody? Diversity is good for everybody, right? So anyway, I'll stop because I have a lot. We could go on for another hour about that as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, I think we are out of time. I wanted to thank all three of you so much for joining us. I think what you've been talking about is so inspiring, and I'm so happy to be learning more about your programs. I'm so excited with all of what you're doing. So great. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. We will see you soon in November, I hope. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep making the world a better place, and keep making awesome things. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ashley.
Thank you.